Floor plan, typical layout, part 1. Basically, we're going to go over how to do an entrance, window displays, and mannequins. So the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure you have the overall shape of your store, and I recommend, we're going to look at just a typical rectangle. Excuse me. But you need to make sure that you have the shape of your store, so if it's round or several rectangles, whatever the case may be, you need to have the perimeter already set. And typically we see the entrance towards the front, obviously, unless you have it to the side. And one of the things that you can do is it depends on what your entrance is. If you're in a mall store, you might have a gate, or if you have doors. If you have one door, are you going to have double doors? Are they going to swing open towards the inside, or are they going to swing out? These are decisions that you're going to have to make. Once you decide what kind of store you're at, you can start separating the section for the entrance. And one of the best ways that we do that is using the scissor tool. So if you go to your left, and you get your scissor tool, it's under the eraser tool, you decide how big the entrance needs to be. You do need to make sure that you're ADA compliant, so you need a minimum of 36 inches across from one door for someone with a wheelchair to be able to go through. So make sure that you have enough clearance. It will depend on your scale. Typical scales are 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch. The rule of thumb is if you have a bigger store, you want to do 1/8 inch scale, and if you have a small store, boutique, you should do 1/4. One of the things that I do like to have is I would like to show my rulers. Now I'm going to right click onto them and make them measure inches, and I also want to show my grid. Okay. So those squares, it's like graphing paper, that's what that's for. And then make sure that my store perimeter is inside my artboard so nothing gets cut out. Okay, so now I'm ready to cut out my entrance. Again, I get my scissor tool. I decide how big I'm going to have my store. I'm going with a 1/4 inch scale, so I'm going to make sure I have enough room for my doors, for my entrance. And if it's a mall entrance with a large gate, I'm going to have a pretty large opening. So I'm going to snip. I'm going to click, first of all, with the black arrow, click your rectangle. Then go to your scissor tool, and you designate where you're going to snip. And I want to make sure I know where my middle of my rectangle is, and you can see I'm positioning it using the grid. This is the very middle part, so I already know by using the grid. I'm going to snip here. I'm going to snip here. You have to click right on the line, or the scissor tool will not work. It'll give you an error message. In fact, I'll show you real quick. If I pick the rectangle and I click the scissor tool and I'm a little off, I actually snipped it. If I'm a little off, you'll actually get an error. Please use the scissor tool on a segment or anchor point because I clicked right off it. So zooming in will help. Once you snip, see how it designated this line? It actually cut it. I can press delete and it'll get rid of it. I'm going to go ahead and use my type tool to click entrance. I already have it for the sake of time. And for a mall entrance, usually you do have the little sensor security when you leave with a sensor tag. So you can use the pen tool and actually draft just a straight line. And make sure that it's actually touching your perimeter. And if your stroke is too thin or not bold enough, you can click on the stroke menu, it's the one with the little lines, or you can go to window and click on stroke. But once you get your stroke, you can actually designate, change the weight. Once you have the sensor section for one side, then you can go ahead and make a copy. Press Alt and bring it on over to the other side. And that would work for a mall entrance. If you're not doing a mall entrance, you're doing a door instead, or doors, I should say. So I'm undoing these snips. Again, making sure that you have enough clearance. I'm going to go ahead and get my measurement. This is how wide I'm going to make my doors. So best thing to do is to draft a line. You can always do the segment tool, click right on the artwork, and you can say how many inches you want. Now when it says inches, obviously it's inches on the artboard. So if I want 3 feet minimum clearance for one door, that's 3 feet, that's 36 inches, but I'm not going to put 36 inches here. That's 36 inches in the real world. I would have to translate that into how many inches on the artboard or on Illustrator. So if I'm doing, let's say, 1/4 inch. If I'm doing 1/4 inch, that means for every 1/4 inch it's 1 foot. So if I want 3 feet clearance, then I would need 3/4, okay? And that would give me 3 feet. So you have to understand your the width that you want. So you have to actually decide that. But I would draft a line, click on the artboard, line, you can click on the segment tool, segment tool, and literally just click on your artboard and designate the measurement that you need. Once you have the measurement that you need, you can put that against your rectangle, and then you can just snip right on the perimeter of that. Okay. And once you have this measurement that you know will work, that people can go through, then you can actually designate your doors. And again, pen tool works really well. You can use the line segment tool as well. You can either have it the door open at a 90 degree, or you can have it at a 45. Those are usually the most common. Okay, so you can do a 45 degree door opening or a 90. It's entirely up to you. And then what you do is you need to show an arc. And there's 2 ways of doing that. You can either use the pen tool and just create a nice soft curve, because the arc shows the space that it takes up on the door. You can also make the arc dotted line if you want. Also, you can use the arc tool if you want it. Some people choose to use it. It's right underneath the line segment tool. And depends on if you're curving upward or downward. But it actually does an arc. It's a little harder to control. I recommend you use the pen tool, but the arc tool is there for you to use as well. Some people just don't like to use it as much. Again, you can make that a dotted, a dashed line, and how we do that is you do dash line, and then you just go ahead, click on the understroke, click on the dash line, and change the dash and the gap to what you want, and it can make it a dash line. Otherwise, you can leave it solid, it doesn't matter. Now, something like this, see how there's hardly any gap, you need a larger gap, so I do 1 point gap, and now there's more space. But you don't have to do that, and again, it's entirely up to you. There's no set standard how you need to do it, as long as it depicts that there's a door and the door opening. You want a nice soft curve, again, to show that that's where the door would be opening. and you do one, you'd get this and reflect it onto the other side. Okay. And that is with the door opening towards the inside. Okay, this is another version of that. As you can see, here's the arc, here's the entrance. And the doors can be thicker. If the doors are thicker, then you just make thicker rectangles. Otherwise, you can do a line, or you can do rectangles. You can also do rectangles and actually rotate them. Scroll your cursor and rotate them. And that could be your door as well. Okay, so this is an example of doors that are set at 90 degrees. So you can have an entrance set like this. You can have your doors set like this where they're at a 90 degree, but they still have the arc. And in here, they actually, if you go to the entrance, you would actually push the doors in rather than pull. Okay, so you can have it like this. Or you can actually also have the doors swing open out. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be swinging open on the inside, it could swing out. It's entirely up to you how you want to do it. Okay, do make sure that it is clearly labeled, that we know where the entrance is. That's very important. Next is window displays and mannequins. You can choose to have a section for window displays, if indeed there are any. If there isn't, then this would be just merchandise, and it would be enclosed wall. But if it is a window, you can depict, if it's an enclosed window, sometimes you might want to depict it as a rectangle. If it's an open back window, you can show a barrier if you wanted, or if there isn't any. If it's on a platform, you need to show the platform. If it's rectangular, then it's a rectangular platform, so you need to show that. Typically you have windows on both sides of the entrance. This is just typical. It may or may not apply to you. In terms of what you put on the displays, usually you see mannequins. That's what's typical. So you can actually depict mannequins, and the best way we do that is we go to the shape tool, get the ellipse tool, get the oval. Let me zoom in so you can see. And then I'm going to draft a circle right in the center, and that's going to be the head. Remember, a floor plan is a bird's eye view, so it's what I see when I'm, as a bird, I'm perched on the very top and looking straight down. So if you're looking at a mannequin, you're basically going to see the head and the shoulders of the top. So this is a very common symbol for a mannequin. It almost looks like an eye if you just look at it. But this is what your typically what symbols are for a mannequin. And of course you can, once you have these two shapes, you can group them. The actual circle and the oval. Right click and group. And now whenever I move them, they're together. And if I make a copy, they're together. A lot of times you see them in groups of 3. So you can actually show how much space that's taking. You can rotate it again. So one's facing one way, one facing the other. The idea is that you have a good sense of balance. You can also have props and other things, but typically, since that always changes, you want to at least depict some mannequins, because that would be what's typically there on the window. Okay? And that's how you do entrance, mannequins, and displays.